Greetings and welcome, everybody. I'm going to do a little housekeeping here for Zoom while we populate the attendee room. Thank you for coming and joining us today. If there is somebody would be kind enough to say hello back in the chat box so we know we're broadcasting. Zoom is pretty bulletproof, but I've been known to screw things up before. So if someone wouldn't mind saying hello back. We are pleased to have our friends and new friends in our group today from MIDAS. I've had the opportunity to look under the hood a little bit and see what's going on and see the nature of the business and also the people who are involved. And I think you're going to enjoy the presentation today and also get a sense of whether it's an opportunity for you that makes sense. There is an extraordinary team of people that are involved here. And if you didn't already realize it, as I didn't, that there's a lack of awareness of how big this problem is. And so you're going to learn about that shortly. In the meantime, I just want to, full disclosure, let you know that this is being recorded. We're going to post it on the Family Office Insights website a day or two after the webinar. And just to be clear, we can't see or hear you, but you're welcome to ask questions in the chat box or the Q&A, and we'll get to them as we go along here. And I want to welcome our new friends, Jeffrey, Jonathan, and Michael here, Family Office Insights, and thank you all for participating in our webinar series since the COVID shutdown. And we haven't got together with people in New York City since March. And so we're broadcasting to you from Florida, Cleveland, and 2 New York City locations. And so welcome, everybody. And Jeffrey?
Thank you very much, Art. And we're really happy to be presenting to your Family Office Insights group. We'd like to self-introduce, so spend a few minutes just giving a bit of a background on our team, the 3 executives you have on the call, and we'll talk about some of the other partners we have a little bit later. And I think you'll see that this is really a rare combination of careers of experience in our respective areas. And when you put the 3 together, we create a really unique executive team to deliver on the products and systems that we are developing. So I'm going to turn it over to our CEO and founder, Michael LaFauci in New York, and ask him to take over. Michael.
Terrific. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. Nice to meet everybody. So my background, originally, I was a pharmacist, have 20 plus years of experience within hospital, corporate, GlaxoSmithKline, retail, and academically. Also was an adjunct professor at St. John's University. Went out and became an entrepreneur back in the early 2000s, left my career a little bit around pharmacy, and I started to focus on building companies organically in the technology and software sectors. And they were centered around remote ordering processes, and that was touchscreen technologies and so on. And that led me into a company for electronic prescribing, as well as creating a medical device company, which I sold off to a publicly traded company called Cooper Surgical. And that was for eliminating fetal lacerations around a baby during a C-section. Came about this idea, and I founded the company because I was on a consulting gig on with BD Pixis around accountability and systems. And somebody had made mention to me, if anybody can figure out a safe way to dispose of fentanyl patches, that would be really make a difference in what was happening around the industry. And the entrepreneur that I went home and started to look into this even more. And here we are, we're very proud of what we have created with my team around systems and accountabilities around medications. And I'd like to introduce you to my COO and personal friend as well as Jeff, but Jonathan Pinsky first.
Thanks, Mike. Pleasure to have everybody with us today. My background started really on the technology side, digital image databases, which I did for the apparel industry, consumer goods industry, and exited that company after only about 6 years. Sold it to a publicly traded company that was in the electronic interchange space back in 2000. Met Michael shortly after that, did the concession ordering company with him, had a great exit out of that business, and then spent the last 15 years back in consumer products, but on the product development and distribution side in oral care and personal care. So all of that product development and operational experience was why Michael and Jeff tapped me a few months after they started MIDAS, so I can help out with that. And really honored to work with both of them. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff now, who'll introduce himself, and then I'll see you back in a second to get the presentation going.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Jono. I'm Jeff Wall. I send regards from Cleveland, Ohio, the center of the opioid universe, not because they're made here or prescribed here more than anywhere else, but because 2,400 opioid lawsuits are here in Cleveland as a consequence of the opioid crisis. What we're going to talk about is solutions to all of the opioid lawsuits and the crises that we hear about every day. So my background briefly is I've spent 36 years as a medical risk management and patient safety attorney. So as a consultant, as a litigator, as an investigator, as a lecturer, that's really been my area of expertise and throughout my career. My two particular areas of interest are operating room safety and anesthesia safety. And like Mike, we've had to deal with untoward things that happen in hospitals. And looking back on my career, when Mike originated MIDAS, I realized that so much of the litigation and so many of the bad things that happen in hospitals that I knew about had to do with mismanagement of medications by providers in the hospital or by prescribers in the outpatient environment. So I lecture at medical schools and hospitals and law schools and bioethics programs. And that's my background and all of ours. And I'd like to turn it back to Jonathan for a dive into our presentation. Jonathan.
Great, thank you. So we're going to get started. And first, as you can imagine, we're going to set up the problem so that you understand what it is that we're here to tackle. We'll get into some product very quickly. Then we'll talk about the building blocks of the business side of the product so that you can understand what the investment opportunity is all about. We'll talk about the team and then the raise itself. And there's a couple other more products that we'll get into as well. The first thing I want to do is share with everybody the vision for the business. And this is all about medication safety, anti-diversion. Diversion is when medication is used for something other than what its intended purpose is. So that could be abusing it or it could be stealing it for certain reasons. And what are the ways that happens all across healthcare? That's sort of the reason for this ecosystem. And I'm just going to touch on these quickly. We're not developing all these products. You're not here to see all of these products, but I really want to give you a vision of what you're investing into. And from fentanyl patches, which is this device here, injectables in the hospital, pills and other medications, both at the home, in the hospital, and in the supply chain. These are all points of diversion, all points where medication falls into the wrong hands. But what we're going to be focusing on the most today are our first systems that we're going to be piloting next year, and then with some stakeholders thereafter, about returning medication, wasting medication, disposing of medication. So you'll see a whole lot on these today. But again, remember, the investment is about the whole ecosystem over time, all of these patent pending items. So the first thing I want to do is share with you some highlights, a couple of gentlemen that we're really proud of that are part of the MIDAS family. Give a listen to this for about 60 seconds, and then we're going to set up the problem for you.
I'm Sherrod Brown. It's a privilege to serve as a United States Senator. Thanks to everyone at MIDAS for all the work you do to make this event possible, and all of you in our Cleveland community for your work to fight addictions. I know the work you're doing is designed to build on this and to give communities more tools, better tools to help combat this crisis. The only way to stop this epidemic is by fighting it at every level, from prevention to treatment to recovery. That's why your work in our community matters so much. Thank you.
Hi, I'm U.S. Senator Rob Portman. I want to thank MIDAS for inviting me to speak to you today at your retreat. I really wish I could be there with you in person, but I'm there in spirit. As you may know, my home state of Ohio has been among the hardest hit in the country by this epidemic of addiction to dangerous and deadly opioid drugs. For years, it's been one of my top priorities here in Washington to try to help communities in Ohio and around the country who have been so devastated by this crisis. I'm glad you are contributing towards solving this pressing crisis that's facing so many communities around the country. I wish you the best of luck in that. Thanks for letting me speak to you briefly, and Godspeed in your important work.
So, like I said, we're very proud to have those gentlemen behind, the MIDAS mission and what we're doing. And I think you'll see when you look at our advisory board, which is really a who's who in healthcare, government, et cetera. You'll see why when we go through the presentation we've attracted these kind of people. So to set up the problem, what I want to do is explain how medication is dispensed in hospitals. And this is not something that's known by most people. But when you get an order for a prescription in a hospital, the nurse, before they come to your bedside, has to go into a med room or a medication room, and they have to go get that medication. They do it in a very sophisticated way from something called an automated dispensing machine. And you could see examples of them here. Those are made by $2 billion entities. One is BD Pyxis, the other one is called Omnicell. And they're very sophisticated. You go up to these machines, you have to biometrically sign in. A drawer will open based on the medication that you're authorized to take out for that specific dose for that specific patient. You'll take it out and you'll bring it to the bedside. But what most people don't know is when the medication comes out of that drawer, it's not always the exact dose that the patient needs. So if you need, let's say, 10 milligrams of a pill, but it's a 20 milligram pill, it's got to be split. That extra is called waste. It has to be wasted. If a syringe has 2 milliliters in it, but you only need 1, that extra cc or ml has to be wasted. And the wasting is not sophisticated like the dispensing. This creates a gap for diversion. And the wasting happens tens of thousands of times a year in every medical institution across the country. The wasting technology compared to this, I want to show you what it looks like. There is no technology. We're throwing them out in garbage pails, squirting them down sinks and toilets. We are signing a piece of paper to tell to show that there's a witness process. And when I say witness, what I mean is in controlled substances, when you take medication out of these dispensing machines or you waste, you're required to go find another human being who's authorized to say, I saw that nurse waste that. So you can imagine that's a really big problem when it comes to time and when it comes to resource of what the nurses are paying attention to. These systems down here, Sharps containers, Cactus systems, they help segregate the waste. I'm sure you've all seen a Sharps container, but they don't do anything to prove that the nurse is actually wasting what he or she says. Now, what's the problem with this from a business point of view? It costs billions of dollars to the industry. When diversion happens, there are all sorts of things that go on in the hospital that cost the industry a tremendous amount of money. DEA imposes fines. Staff has to be replaced. So do their managers or people who collude with them when those witnesses are part of the problem. Insurance premiums go up. Most importantly, though, when there's lawsuits, then it runs into the tens of millions of dollars and community trust goes down. Diversion is on the rise. And we're not just talking about, fines and these other hidden costs, but there are also millions of doses that are reported diverted. These are only reported numbers, and you can imagine replacing those costs a lot of money. We're here not just to talk about hospitals. We're here to talk about long-term care, private practice. You could see diversion happens everywhere. And we also have solutions for the general public. And that's important because you could see here 95% of misuse painkillers are coming from legitimate prescriptions, not from drug dealers or the black market. Every hospital is affected. So from Mass General all the way to the VA, University of Michigan, you could see here, no one is exempt, and we're here to help this across the board. Last thing I want to mention, because it's on everyone's mind, is COVID. So COVID is very, it's the number one thing hospitals need to be focusing on. But if you look here, you'll see that since March, you've seen what we call colliding epidemics. Drug use, substance abuse, opioid abuse is on the rise because of the stress that this pandemic is putting onto community. So that kind of sets it up. I'm going to turn it over to Michael so that he can showcase our view system, which is going to help bring technology to the wasting process. And I'm going to click around while Michael then takes you through some of these slides. So go ahead, Mike.
Terrific, Jonathan. Thank you very much. And when you look at this system compared to what's out there, if Jonathan switches back to the one of the other slides previously, you can see that these are very archaic. There's no real intelligence to them. And when you look at the dates and the connotations on the bottom, they all say that they existed at certain points, but the reality is they all still exist in different ways in different institutions as they are right now. And when Jonathan made mention that we don't have the time and the resources around with the nurses when they need a witness, the one other thing is it creates a distraction to both nurses as they go through this process. So I want to highlight that. So when you come to our system, you're looking at a system that's going to be very intelligent. And intelligence around it, it's called a VIEW system, the Verified Institutional Environment for Wasting. And the best way to show you how this works is to actually walk you through a presentation. So what I'm going to do is walk you through this. But when they walk up to those previous systems, they have to log in and have those two nurses. And they log in with a user ID and a biometric, usually a fingerprint. When they walk up to our system, they're walking up to a system with 3 video high-def cameras on the front end of the system and an iris and pupil scanner up on top. That iris and pupil scan is going to log that nurse into the system. Once that nurse is logged into the system, we're going to really scan in really deep here and you see, focus in. Nurse Pat Smith has been logged in. Keep in mind, this system is talking or speaking to those automated dispensing machines. So everything and all the information there is being transmitted here. So once Nurse Pat Smith has been logged in, he or she will hit go. There's the list of the patients under the responsibility for Nurse Pat Smith. Once Nurse Pat Smith chooses the first patient, for an example, Zachary O'Reilly. We choose Zachary O'Reilly. There's the list of medications that have been pulled from that automated dispensing machine. We're going to choose codeine 60 milligrams that was pulled. There's the 2 nurses. The order was originally for 30 milligrams. We pulled the 60 milligram tablet. The extra there, obviously, is 30 milligrams. There's all the times on the system. We're going to enter in how much we're wasting. And in this particular case, it's 30 milligrams at that exact time. And once we enter that, we're going to hit continue. And then it's going to ask us for a reason why we're wasting. And in this particular case, we're going to enter an extra. Once we enter that reason, we hit continue. Notice the 2 nurses. That'll be a video. That won't be a still picture. Those 2 nurses are in view of the view, right? Once we hit continue, you're going to see the platform where this is wasted. It would open up on its own on the real device. We're just showing you for demo purposes here. But on the left-hand side is where we're going to place that half the tablet of codeine 60 milligrams with those 3 high-def video cameras capturing the size of that tablet, the imprint of the tablet, the color of the tablet, and most importantly, the 2 nurses and the deposit of that tablet into the drawer. Once it gets deposited, we close the drawer. That event or that discarding or wasting event for that patient, those 2 nurses for that physician's order at that time have been captured. It's much smarter than what you saw previously. I'm going to walk you through one more example. New waste occurrence, okay? We're going to choose that same patient, Zachary O'Reilly. Once we choose Zachary O'Reilly, we're going to choose Ativan injection. There was a 2 milligrams of Ativan injection that was pulled from the actual automated dispensing machine. The order was for 1. We're going to tell the machine that we're wasting 1 milligram because that's all we needed out of the 2. We're going to enter the reason. Once we enter the reason, we're going to say, okay, general waste in this particular case. And once we do that, we hit continue. Notice the 2 nurses, like I pointed out before, are still in view of the view. The system now will open up. Now, I want you to pay attention to the right-hand side of this platform on that drawer. The right-hand side is where they're depositing that 1 cc of extra Ativan injection that they do not need and needs to be discarded. With those 3 video high-def cameras capturing the injection of that 1 cc into that right-hand side of that port. Keep in mind, you see that red image there that I'm pointing out? That red image is actually the outboard sharps container. There's a 4th high-def camera there that's capturing to ensure that what the nurses are depositing in that syringe is empty, nothing is left over, it's being deposited, it's clean and ready to be finished. Notice, everything has been captured with those 2 nurses on the bottom, with the primary and the secondary, and the primary one up on top, related to that event for that drug, that physician's order. What I want to do is walk you through what's the magic behind the scenes here. So there's a lot of magic there. First and foremost, when they logged in, I said there was an iris and pupil scanner. That's not only logging that nurse into the system, that's also measuring and it's taking a measurement of the iris to see whether or not it's dilated or maybe constricted, because that would be a signal for maybe an impaired nurse on duty. And that would alert pharmacy and nursing that they may want to review what's happening at this machine on this recorded or live event. The other thing it has here, it has a random collection for assay. So what does that mean? So inside that drawer, before anything actually deposits into the bottom of the drawer, and if nurses think that they want to get a little smart around this, they wouldn't be able to, because then you never know when that random assay is going to happen, because there'll be a carousel that'll constantly rotate and arbitrarily take a random assay. So for that half a tablet of codeine that we just showed you, or that 1 cc of Ativan injection, it can be collected at any point. And then once it's collected, it's pushed over to the right-hand side. And once it is collected, it alerts pharmacy and nursing that it has been collected, and that they can come up and retrieve what needs to be compared to the actual video footage of what's been wasted during this event. It becomes very smart. The other thing it has an electric eye confirmation, right? And what does that mean? So inside that drawer, if nurses think that the file will never be reviewed on what they're doing around this wasting process, it always ensures that if nothing passes that electric eye in the drawer, meaning that nothing is deposited, that would alert pharmacy, that would alert nursing that they need to review this video image file for this wasting event. So it becomes very smart in a lot of different ways. But most importantly, I want you to think about what we're doing here today. We have ourselves on Zoom. And one of the things that Jonathan spoke about before is that you have to find the witness, especially when you're doing a controlled substance. And on this slide, you can see they'll be able to pull up anybody, like a supervisor, or maybe even a nurse at a different station, who can actually be the witness around this event, so that there'll be less distractions and less time looking for somebody. It's also a way that you can become a virtual witness, right? You don't need a nurse probably in the future. We'll be able to have that platform for them, so that if this rule, which is a 1970s rule of providing a witness around this substance, controlled substance disposal, it would not be needed anymore, and we would have the platform to ensure that this technology can pursue it in a way that's really robust. But I want you to look at this from a remote monitoring process, and you look on the screen. There's ways that they can do this from their cell phones, and if you look here, you can see HCA, who's already in discussions with us, one of the biggest hospital corporations of the country. But they're looking at this as they're going to look at it on their cell phones for pupil scan alerts, high temperatures, because you can actually scan nurses' temperatures from this actual unit. So what would it be like now to take a temperature of a nurse when they're on duty versus just when they're walking in? And if they have anything wrong with them, especially with COVID, right? That's a great example. If they're spiking a temperature, what would that be like to alert nursing and maybe even employee health? So it has a really robust opportunity to really look at this from a supervisory personnel point of view. I want to point out on the next slide that it's very flexible in how it's going to be rolled out. So deployment-wise, that unit that we showed you previously has compartments, and all the compartments they're modular in their formation, so you can switch out different components to meet the demands of the hospital in the different areas. So the OR, in this particular case, you see that unit there, that has a different look and a different feel, and it's going to meet different requirements in the OR versus what would be in a normal med room. And we want to make sure we ensure that during that process, because that's another area they'll need that. It's a very big area. We'll talk about that a little later, why we're getting so much interest there. But when we made this machine, we didn't make it in a bubble. We made it very robust with a lot of insights. And we did it with med-surg nurses. We did it with PACU nurses, LTC nurses, ICU nurses. I wanted to ensure that us and the whole team, we weren't missing any point of logistics on the wasting or discarding process, but we wanted to make it smarter than what it is right now. And the amount of data that we're producing from this actual technology on the next slide, you will see that this data is very important to stakeholders like nursing, pharmacy, risk management, and the government side, FDA, ONDCP, DEA, and FEMA. And it's providing enough data that it's creating a lot of interest, not only for the private companies, but also the public, as we talk about the government side. And I'll have Jeff Wool just step in here so he can discuss what's happening with MIDAS on the Washington side, not just around this system, but also our sister product on the retail side.
Thank you. Thank you very much. One other point, we talked.
I'm sorry.
Art.
That's okay. Before you do that, if you don't mind, I think others are thinking this too. In the incumbent method of having a witness, in the event that they can't get a witness, or do they absolutely have to get a witness, what's the workaround that's been abused there?
So what'll happen, it's a great question. What'll happen is you'll have a secondary witness step into the room with the nurse, provide their finger and their sign-on, and then walk away. They never actually witness it. But on paper, it looks like it was a witness there. There's no reality to it. So it's just an attestation that they were there, but it's no real reality to it. So my analogy to our technology always is we put Zoom in our front cameras in our houses to look at where our packages are being delivered. And we want to do that. There's almost like Zoom for the med rooms, Zoom for the ORs to really have accountability. And we choose to put cameras and have accountabilities around banks and casinos. Why not do it to protect patient care? Because this is really a patient care issue, because when you have impaired nurses who are abusing and are under the influence, they're putting our patients at harm, and also our family members who are in the hospitals at home.
Yeah, the other answer to that, Art, is the vulnerability is created because the DEA regulations require the witness, but what's ultimately happening is it's on the honor system. And there's no reason that control over controlled substances can't be verified and validated using technology, which is what we'll talk about with the government when we get through a few of these questions.
So the thing that if they have somebody put their finger and they didn't actually witness it, I get that. But if there's no way to, is there a way for them to say, I can't do it the way you want me to do it because there's no way around the witness? Is there a bailout button that allows them to continue?
No, there's no bailout. But what they do, though, Art, is they leave it to the end of their shift, and they'll leave it in their pockets, and they go home with it. That's one, and that's inadvertently, right? Doing that.
Yeah.
But what happens is they get written up for it. And what goes on is that it becomes a whole investigational, because it signals that you didn't waste something on your shift. Where is it? And they start chasing them down. So from a supervisory personnel, it's a big headache, because then they get
waste of time.
Waste of time, big time.
Yeah. Okay. Continue. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
It's a great question.
Yeah.
No worries. In addition to the insights that we did with all the nurses, because we're getting so much attention from hospitals who want this in their operating rooms, we've also spent virtual visits with anesthesiologists at major hospitals around the country, looking at workflow, looking at the medications, because obviously the medications that are used to put you to sleep and keep you sleeping are different than what come out on a medical surgical floor. So let me speak for a couple of moments about Washington. So when we began the company, we didn't intend to use regulation to force this on the industry, which is healthcare providers, but through the prominence and expertise of several of our advisors we'll talk about soon, we have gotten a lot of attention in Washington, first from the bipartisan Congressional Opioid Task Force, to whom we testified as the only company on the technology of prevention and drug abuse prevention and diversion. So they teed up a whole special meeting for us, and we had about 50 Congress people from both sides of the aisle looking at what we were doing and telling them that technology can reduce the amount of regulation, like that witnessing idea and things related to drug takebacks, which we'll talk about in about 10 minutes. We also were featured at a hearing 2 weeks ago with the Office of National Drug Control Policy coming out of the White House, talking about takebacks and solutions, and several other companies in our space that have inferior solutions actually talked about MIDAS. So in the upcoming weeks, we're going to be meeting with folks from the DEA, including the administrator, and folks from ONDCP, the lead, Jim Carroll, to talk about this, to really explain how technology can improve the situation and reduce the need for unnecessary and very outdated regulations.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. So that, really wraps up the section that sets up the problem and dives into this first solution from a product point of view. What I want to do now is talk about the business building blocks around this, so you can get an idea of what the investment will look like over time because of the market opportunity. We're going to talk a little bit about the team, and we're also then going to talk about the specific ask, right? This round of financial raise for the company. So let me share now a little bit of information, like I said, on the building blocks of the business side of this. Those automated dispensing machines that I showed you, there are 250,000 of them around the United States. So an average size hospital like NYU Langone can utilize about 600 systems like that, right? On all the nursing floors, all the nursing units, et cetera. So we know that the hospitals are telling us they'd love a 1-to-1 ratio. Michael likes to say, really, we're going the last mile, right? You're not going to put in a fancy washing machine in your house and then just hang your clothes to dry on a clothesline. You're going to buy a fancy dryer to go with it. Well, on the dispensing side, we have this fancy technology. On the wasting side, we don't. So they want to see a marriage of our system to all of those couple 100,000 ADMs. Those ADMs are put in on a lease basis. So we would do the same thing. We're putting this at around $650 a month, which is what hospitals are telling us is a great price for these. So it's not a big cap X. It's really over time that they're going to be paying for this. Those leases are often renewed 10 years. So there's a really nice long tail of recurring revenue. We know how big the market opportunity is. But when you look at some financials, we're doing a very modest projection just for the first 5 years. And you can see what kind of revenue that brings in. There's a really good profit margin on these units. Yes, there is maintenance, there is installation, but we're fixing prices on those by working with outside companies that do national maintenance and installation on equipment like this. And from a timing point of view, our pilot programs are slated to start next year. So we are pre-revenue. The product is in development, working prototypes, as you could see what Michael just showed you, but enough to get us the traction that we need to make this, I think, really interesting for everybody watching. And that's because we have incredible early adopter interest for next year. Most importantly, the biggest system in the United States, HCA, has approved our pilot. We are working with them for their West Florida region right now. It's about a 6-7 month haul until we're ready for that pilot, give or take a few months due to COVID, but they are actively working with us. And that really, is where this opportunity rests, right? Because we know the biggest influencer in the country is going to be doing this with us. You see some great other institutions here, and then a few others that are not on the list that we're in talks with: Duke, Cleveland Clinic, Mass General, which is a Harvard hospital. We're really proud to be working with those institutions now to secure these pilots. One of the ways that we get into these incredible hospital systems is through the influence that we have because of these folks, right? So this is our corporate leadership. This is just some of our board of advisors and directors. And you could see gentlemen like Governor Chris Christie, Governor Tom Ridge, who are absolutely essential in this crisis and fighting this at every level. Dr. Cosgrove, who just left the Cleveland Clinic, CEO of one of the most respected hospitals in the country and has great influence. Marla Weston, who's been incredible because as a former head of the ANA, that's 4 million nurses. When you put technology like this into a hospital, you have to make sure that it's going to be welcome, right, by the people who are going to use it. And those really are those frontline care workers. And then you see we round out with executives in pharmacy, folks like Dan Luce, who just left Walgreens after a 30-year executive position there, Bob Campbell from Deloitte, and Andrea Barthwell with great government penetration on our board of directors, et cetera. There's quite a few others on here. We don't have time to mention and go through everybody's bio, but again, on the retail side, which is going to share soon, Stericycle's the $9 billion company that's the leader in medical waste. Their former CEO jumped onto the opportunity to join our advisory board because who better than Mr. Aludo to share how to add technology, right, to this antiquated wasting process. So we're really honored to have a team like this. We've also, while we're a startup and we're a small internal team, we have a really tremendous external team. And the highlight there is Nottingham Spurk out of Cleveland. That is their building where they do complete vertical from engineering to marketing, over 1,200 patents that they've been part of for their customers. And of those 1,200 patents, 95% of them have been commercialized, right? So they understand how to get product to market, both in industry and on the consumer side, which is really Midas's sweet spot. And there's quite a bit of intellectual property that has been filed with those patents being awarded in, I would say, about the coming 12 months, but with all green lights from the patent office that everything that we're looking at is really novel and ready to go. 13 of them, in all. Timeline, just so we could kind of bring us up to today, we raised our seed funding back in the end of 2018. That gave us the runway to file all of these patents, to start the heavy product development and engineering, software development, bring the advisors on, and we opened up our seed round just at the end of last year. Naturally, COVID has been part of everybody's challenge, but we're really happy to say of our $7.5 million seed round, we are over $1.5 million just with friends and family in. The rest of it looks like it's going to be coming from institutional money. We are in early due diligence with one of the major healthcare VCs. We have venture arms of major hospitals, including HCA, looking at us. And we also have Omnicell and BD Pixis in third, fourth round conversations with us to do some kind of joint venture on development or investment, which would really sail the company in a great direction. This year has been mostly government relations partner and pilot development, which got us to this level with HCA. So that brings us to the offering. Like I said, it's a $7.5 million raise. Here's a very loose use of proceeds for implementation of that view system and engineering on the rest of the product portfolio. Those all play a second string to the view system, though. I want everybody to understand we're very, very focused on just getting that one product piloted and rolled out. So that 18-month runway you can see here, and we're happy to talk a whole lot more about that. There are some other financials which I'm just going to tease with. You start to see for that view system what we're anticipating in terms of the rate of adoption to hospital networks. When I say networks, these are major hospital systems. You think of Northwell Health, you think of HCA, UPMC, et cetera. And you see a very modest growth on number of view units that are leased, right? So we're not biting off more than we can chew. These numbers are super attainable when you look at how many automated dispensing machines are out there, and then a very nice revenue growth. And then we could share things like EBITDA profitability later. But really excited to have family offices like this as part of the mix here. One thing I want to mention, all of the revenue growth does not include data revenue. And this company is going to create a tremendous amount of data that has a tremendous amount of stakeholders interested. So let me just pause there before we get into what we can do on the consumer side. Art's just come on, see if there are any questions, and take a breather.
Can you go back to the slide where it shows the revenue and the number of hospitals?
Sure.
I think I did the math, and I know it's not fair, but beyond pilot, pick a hospital that one would recognize, and you're going to have 20 units in there, or are you going to have
Sure.
5?
That's a great question. So let's go with UPMC, which is University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. And let's just take one building at UPMC, which is their children's hospital, right? So this is representing hospital networks. Within a network, you can have dozens of buildings, right? So I'm talking about 3 networks. But let's just take one building, UPMC, their children's hospital. They have a utilization in that one building for about 110 view systems. They need about 30 in their ORs. They need about 80 something in their general population. So what would happen is we'd go into a facility like that. We'd put in 1 or 2 systems on a pilot program, make sure it works, make sure it's integrated with their systems, make sure the nursing staff, pharmacy staff, diversion team understands the process. And then they told us we would want to then expand that. And they gave us these numbers, right? They said, we want to do this. We would need about 30 in OR. We would need about 80 something in general population. Now think about HCA. That one hospital system alone has over 200 hospitals in the HCA network. And imagine each of those hospitals utilizing between 30 and 300 view systems. I think the total capacity for HCA nationwide was over 40,000.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in right there. I mean, HCA on its own could just be its own business. We would hit those projections just on that system, that hospital system. So it's important for everybody to understand that. And it's a great question you brought up. And I think somebody just chatted in a question about HIPAA compliance. So Jonathan, if you can reference that.
And data security also.
Yeah, sure. So what happens with this system, it's twofold. So first, I want you to think about what goes on in the hospital right now. Everything in that hospital system is inside that HIPAA bubble. We will be plugging into those systems to share and move the data back and forth, but only within these closed systems. We do have a MIDAS cloud, which is sort of where the interchange of the data happens, but all of that is being built into a HIPAA bubble. From a security point of view, data security, data integrity, we're also doing all of this with state-of-the-art and best-in-breed server services. So when you think about things like Amazon S3, you think about similar products from Microsoft, from Oracle, and then when you look at who's on our team, and again, I know I can't get into everybody on this incredible advisory board, but we're working with 2- and 3-star generals out of Deloitte who are part of cybersecurity for the country to ensure this. So I hope that puts a little color around that question.
So follow to that question, do you see it there?
Yeah, about using data outside of the HIPAA bubble. So here's the way that works, because there is a lot of business opportunity for data outside the HIPAA bubble. And the way we do that is by aggregating and then sanitizing the data. So if you look at the stakeholders, right, big pharma might be very interested in number of prescriptions, how much is getting wasted, what the utilization is of that medication. Or insurance companies might want to understand the same thing. We're paying for a bottle of 30 pills, somebody's only using 15, et cetera. So with these kind of aggregators, you can offer data that you can sell and package, but you can do that without having to reveal any patient privacy information. Jeff, did you want to jump in on something here too?
Yeah, real quickly. That's a big market these days. So there was a company that was homegrown here in Cleveland as a little company within the Cleveland Clinic IT department that was called Explorus. And they took exactly the kind of data the questioner asked about, other patients' HIPAA data, PHI. And they scrubbed it, de-identified it, and then would turn it into research data and epidemiologic data. They sold that little company to IBM for $900 million. And that's not even producing one line of data. All they're doing is analyzing other HIPAA protected data. So we see the market for our data as being pretty extraordinary. Good questions.
Great questions. Yeah. So if there's no other questions on that system or, on the RAISE itself, like I said, we are happy to answer those today or to follow up. There's a very big opportunity for MIDAS, and with some of the stakeholders that we've been speaking to for over a year now, like Walgreens, CVS, and I'm sure you're all aware that we recently had one of the annual drug take-back days because of the 400 million bottles of unused medication that's sitting in everybody's cabinets at home right now around the country. And that is how we're going to take similar technology and bring that to the consumer world. It's a product that's coming after the institution, but in just a few minutes, Michael can take us through this and can really get to see how there's a much longer tail for the MIDAS opportunity. So go ahead, Mike.
So, Michael, before you do that, if you don't mind, and I know people are thinking about this, and it's a somewhat unfair question, but one that you've thought about, and very likely one that you can't make a good prediction on. But the growing the business on a prolonged basis or exiting once you've done the proof of concept, just share your thoughts on how you see that evolving without putting yourself in a corner.
Yeah, no, that's great. Mike, you want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead and I'll jump in.
Okay. So we're all here to grow a business. Michael and I have done this. Jeff has been around this industry for a really long time, and we know how to grow businesses, create that tremendous value. And then we've had our exits, at different stages and different levels. So the goal in the beginning was to see how we could go through this in the long haul. However, with Mike's experience in medical devices, and when we look at the landscape and who's looking at us already, there's a really good chance that there will be an early exit, not of the whole company, right? So you'll be able to stay invested in Midas, but of these products, kind of one at a time.
Right.
So an example of that is with, Omnicell, and all of this is obviously speculative, but when you have Omnicell looking at these systems and saying there's so much duplication here of the good work that we do, you guys are in a perfect stage of development. Can we start to co-develop, co-integrate? You never know how something might move that way. HCA, biggest hospital system in the country, our entree to them was through their venture and M&A folks, right? Because they see this as something that they could now get involved with from a business point of view once we prove the concept. And then they could benefit from us selling that to all of the other hospital systems out there. When you look at big pharma, et cetera, there are other ones that are the same. Mike, did you want to step in?
I would love to jump in. Yeah. So based on my experience, both in big pharma and also medical device, I can tell you this. The one thing you never want to do is create a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. The problem exists, right? And we know it exists because it's loud enough. There's lawsuits all across the country about it. And it's not just because the control of opioids. Our systems are for every drug, and systems accountability and tracing, and also the water systems, as you're going to see here when we get into the retail take-back system, as well as in the hospital. We're keeping it out of the water systems there as well. But I can say this, that you create enough, I'm going to say noise, and that's exactly what we're doing. It wasn't our intention to attract government agencies around us. It was never my intention to do that. We don't need that to happen. It's happening on its own. They're contacting us because everything they wrote about recommendations to the White House as to how this should be addressed is actually everything that we have. We didn't even know that until afterwards. And that's why they were so interested in what we were doing. The other point I can say to this is that being attractive and how we're doing this is almost, you can look at this as a company with a pipeline of products. We're going to be smart. We're going to be centered. We're going to be focused. We're coming out with that intelligent view system on the front end. And this is right behind it, as well as one of the other items called the patch catcher. And right now I can say to you that any way we do this from an exiting point of view, strategic alliance, licensing agreement, and I've done them all, is let's be smart. Let's make sure we're making the best for our shareholders in the return, but let's make sure we're making the most out of the company long-term. And the beauty behind this is all the projection. I can't say this over and over, and we can always dig in deep for you whenever you want to review that, is that none of it includes data. We are a product company producing a ton of data. Okay, and you're going to see it, especially on this retail take-back system. And if you look at our other items that are in the pipeline, they do the same thing. And that's why people are interested in us. And that's why the Omnicells and the BD Pyxis of the world, these are huge companies, $1 billion in revenue a year. They're making conversations now. I can tell you this based upon my experience in the past. When I sold other companies in the medical industry, you didn't get that intention until 3 years in. We're not even launching product. They're talking to us, and it's going to commercialization phases with them. They're thinking about how do they commercialize that. When I got to the commercialization phase discussions in my other companies, that's when they're ready to take you out. Okay.
The other piece with that is both of the companies that Mike just mentioned, BD and Omnicell, they hold 100% of the market on the dispensing systems. Right. So we're not talking to the little players. We're talking to the two elephants in the room, and they know we're talking to each one. So creating the market between the two big competitors who could either be partners or acquirers or licensors is a really good position to be in.
We're gonna get creative. We're gonna get real creative. We're gonna get smart. We're gonna be focused in those discussions like we are now. And the reality is, even though Jonathan showed you those 13 patents that have been filed, we're going to be filing another 2 or 3 that I know they're going to be interested in. They don't know. I've implemented every one of their systems in my career. So my 20 years of experience as an assistant director, director of pharmacy, putting those systems in, I knew all of their reservations. Now, full circle for me, I'm back in the industry. I came back, kind of like through other companies in different facets and different industries, but really back in my sweet spot and coming back to I hope to make a really good impact here on what we can do for patients. It's incredible of what we're going to be able to do. And also the length of the product line is incredible. And that's why we're attracting a lot of attention. And when we get through this, I'm going to say this demonstration of what the retail take-back system, I think you're going to see what the social impact is here. And how important that is. And that's really attracted a lot of people. So why don't we dive into that?
Yeah, let's look at that.
Yeah. So when we dive into this, what's going to happen is you look on the left-hand side, you see how naive these systems are. They look like you're going to drop off letters or mail into them, right? And that's what happens now when you bring back your excess medications that are left over in your houses. And I can tell you that in my research, when we started developing this company, I would visit these outpatient areas or these behavioral areas where kids, or addiction centers where kids were actually abusing medications. You know what would happen? They would say to me, they were getting their access to the medications because of the excess medications left in their houses, right? So what we're going to do now is when you walk up to our systems in a retail sector, you're going to walk up to a system, Jonathan, if you can cue me in, as you can walk up to a system where you're going to then walk up to it. It's going to be called the Just Take It Back system, right? It's actually going to be a Just Take It Back foundation that's going to be formed by MIDAS. And when you walk up to the system, you're going to touch the screen. Once you touch that screen, you're going to actually scan the barcode on your prescription bottle of your unused excess medication that you're bringing from home. It's going to instruct you where to put it in that machine. It's going to ask you, what are you returning, to validate that you know what you're returning. The second thing it's going to ask you is, why are you returning it? Are you feeling better? Did you have a rash? Did you have a headache? Did the doctor change the instructions? What is it that made you return this medication? The third thing it asks you is, how do you want to receive your incentive, your gift card, or maybe your reward around returning it? And more importantly, how would you like to donate a portion of your reward back to a treatment or rehab center to come full circle around this from a social impact point of view? It's a different field, right? Because when you look at that system, there's a lot of things that just went on there. First and foremost, the data. When they asked you those different questions, it said, what are you returning? So you validate that. The second and most important question is, why are you returning it? So post-reporting of anything that you get on the dispensing side does not exist. Because right now, we all know data on the front end before we dispense something, from the prescriber side, from the insurance side. We get our prescriptions, we take it in our white bags, we walk home, we're done, right? What would it be like now to have data post-dispensing? It's the reason why the Google Ventures of the world are interested in what we're doing, because we're the first company to do this. It's the reason why Mark Andreessen and his group in Silicon Valley are interested in what we're doing, because we're providing a platform with data that's never been provided before, but we're doing it with a social impact opportunity. And the data is important with people like prescribers, and on this actual screen here, pharmacy benefit managers, health insurers, retail pharmacy, state boards of pharmacy, DEA, FDA, pharmaceutical manufacturers, public health officials. It's the reason why when we met with Larry Merlot, the CEO of CVS, when he sat down with us, he said he could not believe what we were doing because it's never been done before. It's so naive in how they're doing it now. But I said to him, it's time for CVS. You took the opportunity to take cigarettes and tobaccos off your shelves. Take the lead and take the opioids and controlled substances, or even just any day-to-day drugs that are left over in our houses, and take them out of there and bring them back to a system that offers a reward, but also gives us an opportunity to give back in a special way. Here's what I want to tell you about the technology. On the bottom of that machine, when you return your medications and you put that bottle in, so let's just say you were prescribed 30 Percocet originally, it takes that bottle, it deposits it on the bottom where it says medication take back system. And on that bottom, it opens that bottle, it displays those pills on that platform. Through a digital image database of all the drugs of a gentleman that's on our advisory board, Jesus Caban, who actually invented that database, we're going to now be able to cross-reference those images of what's been returned on that platform with the library to say whether or not are you returning your 15 original Percocet, or are you returning Skittles? Are you returning aspirin? What are you actually returning? Because that's data that nobody has. And to ensure that we can do that in a real way, that's what we're going to do. But it's also going to point up to the MIDAS cloud, and it'll be in that prescription drug monitoring process so that they can monitor it. So doctors and prescribers, the FDA, can feel confident on what we're bringing back to ensure that patients are bringing back what they originally prescribed, but also give maybe a patient a score if they are going to be responsible, so prescribers can feel more confident and more precision around their prescribing.
Does that mechanism to scan and authenticate that you're bringing back what you say you're bringing back happen real time before they get their receipt?
Real time. It's that
and
bad.
That mechanism is already something that functions, not that you've created.
It's just a matter of putting components together as it relates to digital image database and artificial intelligence. It's all part of the system. Jonathan?
Right. The technology exists, and then bringing that technology into this box so that it can just physically dump the pills out and take that instant image. It's pretty incredible, because the heavy lift is the part that's already been accomplished. That technology.
There's a couple of other values. Obviously, getting the drugs out of your house is important. Making sure they don't end up in the water table is important. So to accomplish that, by collecting them scanning them, accounting for them. We're also destroying them in that box. So once we scan them and confirm that they are what you say they are, we're using some proprietary chemicals from a company we're partnering with, which will destroy them on site. Because what we hear from CVS and Walgreens and some independent pharmacies and Stericycle, which charges pharmacies $1,000 a month to empty the box per store, is that once it goes into that box, the people who take the trash out, the drugs in the bottom, are actually diverting medication. So not only are we preventing diversion within the hospital with the VIEW system, but we're preventing diversion once it's in a container by destroying it on site. And where does it go? It doesn't go to Stericycle to be incinerated. It goes out in the regular trash because it's no longer a controlled substance. So 2 weeks ago was a DEA take-back day, and we spoke to the DEA about this. They collected 800 tons of medication in drive-by sites all around the country. How many pills do they actually know went into that? They have no idea the identity of even one pill that went into those 800 tons. Isn't that ridiculous? All they look at is tonnage and weight, but they don't know what's in there. They don't know if it's expired, peanut M&Ms or Vicodins. We're going to track all of that and then feed that data back to the docs so the docs can reduce the number of unnecessary medications. There's data out there. The studies show it. It works. So we're really excited about that.
Great. So that, really wraps up the presentation. We hope that everybody really understands well the problem we're solving on the institutional side, how that VIEW system is going to address it, and then also how the business will build as a result of the way that we're putting this VIEW system into the marketplace, what the ask is for, what we're doing with the use of proceeds in this Series A. And it's a very simple process after this. Happy to be one-on-one with anybody with other questions, financials, product, etc. And then, Art, did you want to jump in on closing or more questions for anyone?
Well, as soon as at the end of the hour when I ask for more questions, everybody starts bailing. So don't go anywhere, guys. The thing I would want to mention, however, is that you folks, I'm imagining, have all the docs in the data room and information like that. And so we'll be sure to connect everybody directly with you so you can connect with them and see if the level of interest and suggest that if they want more information, they can get it.
Yeah, 100% with the data room one-on-one. But that's exactly how we go through this process with our investors. Yeah.
And it's always hard to tell. Always is a tough word. It's generally hard to tell how long it takes to wrap up a round, but do you have a deadline that you're looking at?
So we are really looking towards the end of this year, and that's really because in the conversations that we're in with our institutional investors who may close and take the round. So we want family offices, friends and family angels to really work with us over the next several weeks. Now, if it doesn't happen that way, of course, we're going to leave the round open, but we're very far along in some of those conversations, which is why it's important to us to be having presentations like this, as quickly as possible to get those people in.
Yep. Can you jump back to the Ask page?
Yeah, sure.
So the pre-money valuation is fixed, meaning that you're not doing a convertible note with a cap and that sort of thing.
So I'll tell you what's interesting about the convertible note is that we've had folks that are of a different level of investor that have talked to us about that. And so we're absolutely open to having that conversation. But it's all based on, what we work out with them, how much the investment is that they want, what kind of strategic relationship we're going to have. For the 1.6, 1.7 million that we haven't already, it's been fixed at this price.
It totally makes sense.
Yeah. And, that's another thing we're very happy to get into is how we went from that first valuation, which was, independently looked at. We have 409A valuation on that. and then to bring it to this level. Very happy to discuss that with anyone.
Yeah, the other thing is that there are many investors who came in at the seed round and also re-upped in the A round who are professional money managers. A number are CEOs and founders of multi-billion-dollar PE funds and investment banks in Cleveland and around the country. So we're very satisfied with the pricing of this round. We're willing to talk about it, obviously, as you said, Art, with alternate investment vehicles, but we're satisfied with the pricing as it's currently situated.
And those folks invested privately as opposed to through the fund at this juncture.
Correct. Correct. And quite honestly, a number of them said, if you were raising 50 million, we'd be in this round like crazy.
This is a story we've heard before. Yes.
Right. We were not in their investment threshold bucket. And we didn't want to overcapitalize the company by, raising more than we really needed at this point for all the reasons you talked about with exit and strategic partnerships and things like that.
Totally makes sense. So why don't we go ahead and have a whatever you care to wrap up comments, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So like I was saying, the investment is definitely geared towards this pilot program, which is really the launching pad for the company around the VIEW system. The investment is in the entire product portfolio. And as you saw in the use of proceeds, some of that money does go to continued development of all these products. Just so you know, there's physical samples of all of them. We have, working what we call site models so that we can show them to nurses in the community. So absolutely keep in mind that you'll be part of this whole solution. We'd love you to be part of it with us, obviously. And like Art just said, from here, individually, we'll be happy to share more information on the product side, the raise side, and also I think it's important to understand some of those future projections. And there's a lot of detail behind those sort of bar charts that I put up before.
Very cool. Anybody else?
No, terrific. Thank you so much for arranging this for us. We're excited about creating a shift in the healthcare industry, and we're excited about making an impact on the social side as well.
And thanks to all of our guests for joining us on a Wednesday afternoon. And we wish everyone good health, and we'll be in touch.
Indeed. Thank you all for being here, and thank you. That was really, I've seen a million presentations, and that was quite good. Thank you for covering it so well. And as I often say, thank you all for sharing with us the only thing you can't make more of, and that's your time. And the Family Office Insights community being so kind and participating here. And thank you again, guys. That was super cool, and we'll make sure everybody gets in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.